BMW's Boxer Twins vibrate, well, that's a bad thing, isn't it? Harley Davidson's vibrate, now that's a good thing. Harley Davidson sell bikes on the strength of their vibration. They haven't got a lot else going for them after all. Noise and vibration, that's what sells Harley Davidsons. And they have a massive fan base. So, is the vibration a good or a bad thing? Well, it depends whether that vibration contributes anything to the experience, or whether it detracts from it. I've ridden bikes from the 1960s that vibrate, and they vibrate in a way that make you want to get off in 25 miles. Triumphs, BSAs, people were tough in those days. Motorcyclists now wouldn't ride a Triumph Pontlliw from 1969 very far. You're soft. Yes, so BMW Boxer Twins do vibrate. This bike I'm riding, the R1100S from 1999, to 550cc or thereabouts pistons, boxing, as the name suggests, punch in left and right at the same time. Imagine, inherently it's a very smooth design. At speed, a lot of the vibrations cancelled out, and BMW's older than this, before BMW decided to start fitting balancer shafts, would vibrate quite wickedly until about 3,000 revs, and then it would appear at the time they smoothed out and became like a magic carpet ride. Now I don't know if my memory is tricking me, whether I'm seeing old BMWs through rose-tinted spectacles, but that's how I remember them. And I'd love to ride an old R80 like the one I had in 1984, just to see if it's as smooth as I remember. The R1100S came out in 1995. I think it was, sorry, not 1995, 1998. Arrived in the UK and went on till 2005. It's an air-cooled engine, air and oil I guess, because it's got an oil cooler. And excuse me a second, in front of that car. Gotta watch out for sheep on these mountains. We're on the Betus mountain in between Swansea and Ammanford, and this is one of my regular runs. So where was I? Oh yes, I'd like to ride an old R80 again, just to compare it to this. Yes, it vibrates, but in a good way. It doesn't vibrate like a Harley Davidson, but it vibrates. With the advent of electric motorcycles and electric cars, vibration is going to disappear of all sorts on motorcycles. And they will reach a point in time where people will crave riding a bike that actually communicates to them, because that's what the vibration does. It tells you what the engine's doing. Now at no time on these Boxers does the vibration become unbearable or even uncomfortable, but the bike is conversing with you all the time. If you didn't have a rev counter, you'd have a pretty good idea of where you were on the rev range. Not just by the noise. I wear earplugs, I can't hear what the engine's doing, I'm pretty deaf anyway. But this is the vibrations through the handlebars and seat, little as they are, and footrest, telling you exactly what the bike is doing. Now that's not a bad view, is it? That's why I brought you over here. These little narrow Welsh mountain roads. If you can see over that side, no, I'm in the way. Look at that. Yes, these little narrow Welsh mountain roads offer an awful lot for an enjoyable evening. I set off at 7 o'clock, it's 20 past 7. It was 20 minutes since I left the house. I've been riding on a mountain for quarter of an hour. And isn't that fantastic? Always surprises me you don't see more motorcyclists up here. So back to the R1100S. It was the sports derivative of the 1100 range that came out in the early 90s, I think. It had a hike in power up to 98 brake horsepower. It was the most powerful of all the boxes. The lightest. It has the cantilever front suspension, which gives it remarkably confidence-inspiring handling. It's very sure-footed. It's pretty comfortable, as virtually all BMWs are. This one's had a handlebar conversion to take the bars up above the yoke, which makes it even more comfortable. It was originally introduced as a sports bike, but it never was. In real terms, when this came out in '98, people weren't looking for a BMW to go fast on. They'd be buying R1s, Fireblades, Hayabusas, that kind of stuff. But where the BMW failed to excite in those times, it now becomes a great motorcycle for the thinking man. Because in real terms, where you seldom get the opportunity to go over 100 miles an hour unless it's on a motorway, and then what's the point? This would keep up with anything really on most roads. I'm sure there are some of the modern sports bikes would leave it in the twisties, but it's pretty confidence inspiring. I'm a massive fan of bikes from the 90s and noughties. I think that bikes reached a kind of pinnacle in the 90s, and the only advantage that I see from the noughties is that most bikes became fuel injected, obviously for emissions, but also makes ownership easier, especially in this day and age where if you have a classic bike, every couple of years you seem to have to strip the carburetors and put them through an ultrasonic cleaner. Obviously later bikes, including later models of this, would have ABS. I'm not decrying ABS. I think it's a wonderful thing to have. This bike doesn't have it, I don't miss it. I have, in fact, I've only ever had ABS on one bike, and that's the Royal Enfield Interceptor that I ride. This bike would have cost, I'm not sure what it would have cost at the time, but I gave £2,500 for this bike with 24,000 miles on it. It's probably got another 50,000 miles left in it at least, which is more than most of the bikes that you're going to be buying new for £10,000 or £12,000. So I see modern classics like this as making sound financial sense. This lane is very, very narrow, and we often get farm vehicles, farmers, and people are taking it as a shortcut home from work. You need to be careful flying around bends. The switchgear on these BMWs is heavily criticised, and when I first had the bike I would have agreed, but now that I've had this for 6 months, 7 months, I have to say BMW got it right, everyone else got it wrong. Their system of indicating with your left or your right thumb and then cancelling with the right works very well once you get used to it. I find swapping the other way back to my Interceptor, I find that the hardest. I keep tooting the horn at people on the Interceptor when I want to turn left, which does make it a bit of a pain. Would be better if they were both the same, but I'm going to take you up this hill here, and should be able to appreciate the views from the top. Might even pull over for you to have a look and extend the camera. Where this engine scores heavily is the torque. Low down torque is excellent. You see, have to take it a little bit easy because there will be sheep hiding in these ferns. The road opens out a bit further on. Yeah, the low down torque is excellent. I think it's about 75 pounds-foot of torque. 72, 75. There's a view coming up on the right, and over there on that coastline is where I live, probably about 10 or 12 miles away. Let's pull over and make sure. Yeah, there's a clear bit of road, so that view again. Look at that. If you've never brought a motorcycle to Wales, you don't know what you're missing. And on there'll be another view on the right opening up. That's overlooking Pontlliw, the steelworks in the far distance on by the sea. The DVLA, for those who live in the UK, you all know what the DVLA is, the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Office. Agency, the A stands for, in case you were wondering. Stay there, sheep. There are a second batch of lambs out and about. We're today's something like the 11th of July. Sheep are having their second litter. You've got to be careful. Lambs is if the mother and the lamb are opposite sides of the road. The lamb will get very nervous, but it'll wait until you're on it to decide to panic and run across the road. So you need to be very wary when you see a lamb, or even a sheep, because if there's a sheep, there'll be a lamb close by. This is the Garnswllt Valley. And the road here is like a billiard table. Surfaces. Big jump coming up, I think, because they put a wind farm up here. And they had to remetal the roads. Oh, here's the jump. Ooh. They had to remetal the roads for the big lorries to bring the windmills up. Turbines, wind turbines. That's the word. And there's that view again. Look at that. That is the Locher estuary, heading out into the Bristol Channel eventually. So what would you stand to gain by running a much newer bike? Because I have considered buying something a lot newer. Really like the Speed Twin on paper. I've ridden Thruxton. I wasn't able to put it through its paces, but I did have a little ride on a Thruxton. A friend let me have a go on his. And yeah, it was very nice. It was no more pleasant to ride than my Enfield, I don't think. And I don't think it would offer me anything more than this, so, which is one of the reasons why I stick with 90s and noughties bikes. This replaced a VFR 750. 1994 model, I think it was, and that was a lovely bike, but I prefer this. It was a little bit anodyne. It handled very nicely. It was similar power to this, but without the wonderful torque that this has got. It had its own kind of vibration, which surprised me. I wasn't expecting any vibration from it. Again, not unpleasant, but from what they build as the best bike ever made, I thought, well, I was a bit surprised. This bike has a Vanderlinde exhaust on it, which I have the original exhaust. This is a mild steel exhaust that's been chrome, and I'm sure it would have been very expensive when it was new. It was on the bike when I bought it. I put some baffles in it because it was very loud, and the baffles helped smooth it out as well. It didn't like the lack of back pressure. I think if you put a Vanderlinde exhaust on your R1100S, you need to alter the ECU to match with a tuning chip. I don't know how much extra it would offer you, if at all. And the way I look at it is, this is more than fast enough for me anyway. Why people, I mean, I was a young man myself once. I wanted, whatever bike I had, I wanted it to go faster. I can remember bombing up and down a certain road on a Honda CB400 Project Big One, the little version of the CB1000 Big One, trying to get it to go faster than 112, but it was governed to 112 mile an hour. I wouldn't do that now. I think what's important in a bike, and I'm sorry I didn't see it at the time, is how much performance it'll give you up to 100 miles an hour. There's no need to, you know, some bikes will give you no pleasure below 100 mile an hour. What's the point of having one of those? You want to enjoy the ride. It needs to challenge you in some ways. If a bike handles that well, then you're not going to get any kind of satisfaction from it, in my opinion. Unless you're doing stupid things, and people do buy these bikes, and they do stupid things. But it's not for me, not anymore. No, I'm not ready for a Harley Davidson yet. But as I've mentioned, I have a little Royal Enfield 650 Interceptor, which I've restyled as a GT Continental with a new second-hand tank, clip-on bars, the proper GT clip-on bars and rear sets, because I find it more comfortable than the Interceptor. The Interceptor, you sat very upright, puts a lot of weight on your sit bones, the cheeks of your backside, and I find that I can ride it longer and further as a GT than I could as an Interceptor. It's comfortable for about 3 hours. Gearbox on the R1100S is quite pleasant for a shaft-driven motorcycle. I prefer it to the VFR 750 box, but it's not as sweet as the Interceptor. It has a car-type clutch, and you get this torque reaction from the shaft spinning, which is an idiosyncrasy of BMWs and probably Motor Guzzies as well, I think, where when you flip the throttle it wants to turn the bike around the crankshaft, which is something you get used to. It's not unpleasant at all, but people really like it. Yeah, going back to vibration, in years to come people will pay to have some vibration in their bike, because they're going to be so smooth with electric motors. Perhaps they'll engineer something that will vibrate in them to give them some character. But the vibration is very, very subdued. When you're sat on a motorway, it reminds me a bit of a V2 rocket. You know that drone that you get in films from the Second World War? The drone of a V2 coming in, and then the engine dies and down they come. At a constant speed you've got the same drone. I don't know if you can hear it there. So this isn't a full review of the R1100S, just to saunter out of an evening and just to let you know some things about it. There's very little on the internet about them, but it is a comfortable bike. You could cover a lot of ground on one. Reasonably economical, very, very easy to maintain. The valve clearances are easier to do than on the Morris Minor car I learned to drive on. A car that was designed in the 1940s with lock, screw and rocker valve clearance adjustment. You can do both sides in less than an hour. You could change the oil in half an hour. And interestingly, these bikes like mineral oil, 2050 mineral oil. That's how long ago they were designed and how cheap they are to run. Obviously you've never got to adjust the chain. They feel like they'd go anywhere, you know, they feel unburstable. No, I'd have no qualms about Well, I don't have any problems with that, going out with my mates who ride more modern machinery. One friend, Lee, is picking up his new Ninja 1000 today, I think. Another friend has a Thruxton. No, if we go for a run, I won't be left behind, that's for certain. ABS would be nice, and the early ABS on these is problematic, so people tend to take them off, and the bikes that were built without it, like this, which didn't have it originally, seem to be worth a little bit more. People look for these. Makes the whole brake system very simple to work on. I've just rebuilt the front brakes on this, cleaned the calipers, new pads. I fitted new stainless braided hoses on the front, mainly because the originals weren't quite long enough to allow me to fit the handlebars above the top yoke. Lovely evening. Getting near home now, so I'll say so long. And I'll do a full review of this when I get some time.